Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute rant. The topic of this 10-minute rant is the story that the SNP are just about to announce a national housing emergency. Imagine that, eh? Now, if you want to support the channel, you can become a member or you can subscribe, that's free. Or just click the thumbs up button when you see a video, that would be great. So this story is covered by a few outlets. I'm going to cover the one on the BBC website. Scottish Government to declare national housing emergency is the headline. And the story by David Wallace Lockhart goes, the Scottish Government will declare a national housing emergency later. I think it means later today. The announcement will come from Social Justice Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville during a Labour-led debate in Holyrood. Yesterday the papers were telling, and I'd done a video on it, the fact that Anna Sarwar was going to push a motion through for this state of emergency. The announcement will come, done that. Ms Somerville is expected to blame the UK government, austerity and Brexit for the decision. No, there's no expected about this. This will happen because that's what they always do. It doesn't matter what the problem is. The blame lies always squarely with UK government and Brexit and or Tories, right? That's just the way they govern. But UK ministers said that the Scottish Government receives about 25% more funding per person than other parts of the UK. It's obviously their fault, eh? The SNP previously voted against a motion declaring a housing emergency in November. So what's changed? Since then, with the end of its power sharing deal with the Scottish Greens, the Scottish Government has lost its majority in Holyrood. It faced potential defeat in the debate on the emergency this afternoon. BBC Scotland News understands that the Scottish Greens have yet to decide how to vote. How would you know how you want to vote on something? Right? What you want to decide is what's in it for us to back the government. Let's be perfectly honest with you. So that's why they've not decided, because they've not had their offer yet of how they, why they should vote in a certain manner. These people, man. Anyway, by changing positions and conceding there is a housing emergency, ministers will avoid what could have been a difficult moment in Parliament. So, if they announce it, then we don't need a vote for it, right? Saves them getting battered. Last year, Argyll and Bute, City of Edinburgh and Glasgow City Council all declared housing emergencies. Fife Council made the same move in March, followed by West Bartonshire earlier this month. Declaring an emergency is a signal to the government that the current situation is not working and there needs to be intervention. The council cited issues ranging from pressures on homeless services, rising property prices and high levels of temporary accommodation. By declaring an emergency, the Scottish Government is formally recognising the housing problem and calling for cuts to its capital budget to be reversed. However, there are no practical effects that automatically happen due to declaration being made. Shirley Ann Somerville said that a joint approach would be needed to combat housing problems. I love this. They're doing that thing again that they've been doing since Swinney came in. Everybody else is now to work with the SNP. For 17 years, apart from the wee bit when they had minority government under Alex Salmond, they don't want to work with anybody, right? But now there's problems, everybody you've got to come and work with us, or you're the bad people, right? No. Yous are hopeless. So with 17 years at this, and you're still rotten, okay? Where do we get to? She said, too many people in Scotland are struggling to make ends meet due to housing costs or struggling to find suitable housing at all. We will continue to do everything we can with the powers at our disposal to make progress, but truly tackling the housing emergency will rely on a joint approach between UK, Scottish and local governments. Social Justice Secretary added she wanted MSPs across the Holyrood Chamber to unite with one voice to demand change in approach and the end to austerity, which has caused untold harm to people across the country. Somebody else's fault again. Ms Somerville also said she would use all the powers of her disposal to try and address the housing situation, which she called one of the defining issues of a generation. This isn't that difficult, believe me. Once I'm finished the story, I'll give you some pointers, right? She told BBC Radio Good Morning Scotland that the UK's government asylum process was putting pressure on local housing services. Oh my God. Imagine that. Imagine that, right? But that'll be the UK government's fault, right? The UK government. So what asylum process do you want? Do you want one where we don't bring people in for asylum? Because there's a big difference between asylum seekers and immigrants, right? Asylum seekers are kind of that's some they can't live in their own country through no fault of their own. It tends to be because somebody else wants to kill them, right? But migrants are ones that just fancy it here more than where they live. That's a totally different thing. So now we've got an asylum seeker problem, and that's the UK government's fault. Asylum seekers are leaving their own country. It's their country's fault. Our problem is maybe let too many in, but I can understand you do your civic duty as a world neighbour to look after people that their life's in danger, right? I kind of understand that. The ones that are total flip of that are the migrants, in many cases illegal migrants, where your crackpot party want to open up the borders and bring them in, right? So you keep telling us you're a welcoming country and you accept asylum seekers. Now it's the UK government's fault because we've got a housing shortage. These people are crackers. I digress. Where are we? Oh, aye. Miss Somerville said, she also said the Scottish Government would consider expanding powers on rent controls in order to tackle skyrocketing charges in the private sector. We've been through this. Landlords will stop having houses. They will put them in the market and nobody can afford them. Right? That ain't housing people. That could potentially make it even worse. Miss Somerville said we've got a housing bill about to go through Parliament which strengthens homelessness duties and also deals with some of the challenges of the private rented sector. We do need to look at rent controls in that area, and the Housing Minister has, just in April, convened a Housing Investment Task Force to look at where we can provide innovative, always struggle with that word, routes to finance for the private sector. Scottish Labour has accused the Scottish Government of making brutal cuts to the housing budget. That's not an accusation, that's a fact. Last year, they cut it by 200 million. The party had tabled the motion for opposition debate at Holyrood, later declaring a housing emergency. Labour's housing spokesman, Mark Griffin, said the SNP approach to the emergency had actively fanned its flames due to budget cuts. The Greens have an opportunity to hold the SNP government to account for a litany of failures on housing. The minority SNP government would likely face defeat if their former government partners backed Labour's position. And although the Labour motion is not binding, it would therefore have no practical effect. A similar motion in November 2023 did not pass, as the Greens were still part of the Scottish Government at that point. Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross said previous attempts to declare a housing emergency at Holyrood had been ignored by the Scottish Government. He told Good Morning Scotland that the SNP had taken political decisions that had harmed the housing sector. It's all very well and good the government saying there's a housing emergency, but what are they going to do to sort it? In the budget earlier this year, the Scottish Government cut the affordable housing budget by £200 million, which was around 26%. The Finance Secretary, Shona Robinson, said it was due to Westminster cuts. Imagine that. In one of his final acts as First Minister last month, Hamza Yousaf announced an £80 million increase in the same budget over 2 years. That's when he was fighting for his political survival. That was the day he was due to be meeting students in Glasgow to talk about whatever it was he was going to talk about. Cancelled it that morning, couldn't cover it, and immediately went up to Dundee to a housing association project, put a hard hat on, high vis, and went, I'm a good guy, here's £80 million. No, there isn't. It just means instead of taking 200 million off you, I'm only taking 120 million off you, right? Remember that. UK government spokesman said decisions at spring budget announced an 80 million increase to the same budget over 2 years. Stop that nonsense. UK government spokesman said decisions at spring budget took a direct investment in levelling up Scotland past the £3 billion mark. The Scottish Government received around 25% more funding per person than the equivalent UK government spending in other parts of the UK through its record £41 billion per year settlement. Right? Are we listening? What a lot of tripe. Usual, SNP create an issue, blame everybody else, and it's Westminster and or Brexit and or Tories. Right? That's how they govern. They are red rotten. Now, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We've got three problems. Lack of houses, lack of our own adults working. Around 21% of young adults have never worked a day in their life. And we have a problem with immigration. Now, this is a new thing. They're now blaming the asylum seeker problem in the UK, whereas before it was, we're Scotland, come and live here, we'll take anybody, right? So, you've not got enough houses for the people here and now, and you want to bring more in. And the reason to justify bringing more in is you say, we've got skill shortages. No. We've got people getting up off their arse shortage. That's what we've got, right? So why don't we go back to source, which is schools, right? And educate kids in their, I would say, responsibility to work, right? And don't have a culture which you've created of give me stuff free. Have a culture which you could create and I want to go and generate stuff for myself, right? Get into the heads of the kids. Don't get into the heads of the kids about, do you want to be a butterfly, right? Do you want to have a rainbow flag in your desk? Let's get into the heads of our youngsters today that you can be responsible for your own destiny. And the state are not here to look up after you and tidy up after you, right? Then we look at the jobs that we've got shortages in. Now, if it's IT or if it's care, if it's whatever it is, whatever these shortages that you've decided we've got in skills that mean we have to go and bring in labour from abroad. See those jobs, whatever they are, because you must know what they are, because you're bringing folk in from other countries to do them. Train our youths in those jobs, right? There's your problem fixed. So instead of needing that amount of more houses, we might need that amount, so the housing problem doesn't disappear. You just stop the strain on it in the future going forward, right? And we stop just opening the doors and bringing more folk in. That's just common sense and logic. Will it catch on? I don't know. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. And unless you are the SNP, who blame everybody else for everything they do, everybody else in the world, have a great day. Cheery bye now.